Hello, writers, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's live episode, I have thoughts on the universal, eternal, and objective. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, a channel in which I have tried to take some of the skills and tools and insights that I gathered in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies, trying to take those things and put them out here on this channel so that you can try them out for yourself, see if they work for you. I am on my way out of the business, and I had to figure these things out for myself. I sort of thought, gee, it seems like a shame not to pass them on as I leave. I had gathered them. They're just sitting around. So there is no system. There is no answer to how you should do it. There are simply things that I experienced or discovered that I thought, oh, that's really cool. I should share that with other people who are interested in doing this stuff, this writing for screens, this filmmaking, this writing stuff of all types. In order to do that, I have created on this channel, and here's a little screen grab of the main channel page, a bunch of playlists. Here's a close-up of the playlists. The playlists are, the first three playlists as you scroll down are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. Now, each of these videos is about 10 minutes. They're just little lessons on a particular topic, boiled down from my experiences and trying to find ways to make them useful to you. So there's about 50 of these little 10-minute lessons on these three playlists. Everything else on the channel basically is these live streams, which I do. Having done all the lessons and wanting to communicate with you guys more directly and on looser terms, I've created a live stream that I do every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, if I can make it, in which I take on a different topic every week. This week it's going to be on these concepts of eternal, universal, and objective. But I also answer questions and generally schmooze. So before I get to the first topic, let me say a couple of quick hellos. Hello, Sonia. Hello, Matthew. Hello, Willie. And hello, Donna. Good to see all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Let's talk. Let's talk about the universal, eternal, and objective. And I'll tell you why I'm talking about these, because they strike me as the most useless concepts any artist can think about. And we all are often encouraged to think about, we're told that this is the measure of greatness. This is the measure of a good artist or the good art. And so if you are concerning yourself with these ambitions, with these ideas, feeling a pressure to write something that will be universal or something that will be eternal or something that you feel you have an objective view on, forget it. Forget it. These do not exist. In art, these three things simply do not exist. And yet people talk about them all the time. As far as I'm concerned, these words should be banished from our minds when we are trying to create. Let's just talk a little bit about each one of them and why they are so impossible for us. The first thing is universal. And let's just get straight to it. If there were something that were universal, it would be true for everyone in every language, in every culture, in every time. There is no such thing. I honestly believe there may be no thing that is, and there's certain, like laughter, probably almost every human being has laughed at one point or another, but the things that make us laugh, the question on whether laughing is a good or bad thing, these vary widely from time to time and culture to culture and place to place. So therefore, it's just, I cannot think of anything that is universally true. We live, we die, yes, but our views on these are so different that shared bond is minimally useful. Let's put it that way. Hey, something else is here. Howdy. So we're talking about universal and the fact that there is no such thing. And very often people talk about this in a business sense. In other words, and what they're really saying is we want to appeal to a large audience, which is very different from universal. And in fact, you find that the more, honestly, the more that you try to appeal to a very large audience, generally the less that something is good. Honestly, the things that become appealing to a large audience are often very, very specific. And for whatever reason, they catch on. And there are many reasons that things catch on across cultures. However, and it would be foolish to say that you could figure out the rules for that. People, I assure you, are trying to figure out the rules for that. But I guarantee you, they can't. That they're just trying to figure out the rules for their specific view or culture, and thinking that they are universal because they seem universal to them. The other way that people talk about universal in creative arts, especially in screenwriting, is the belief that there is an average or a normal, which is semi-universal. In other words, people are saying, look, America likes this, or the world likes this. And for a while there in the post-war America, the idea of suburban towns, of separated houses, of places with malls and families with a father and a mother and a couple of children, these were the average, the norm. That simply reveals the biases and beliefs of any particular group. As soon as you talk about your average or your normal, you are simply defining your own beliefs, your own experiences, and recklessly disregarding the fact that there are others. What usually happens when people try to impose a normal, in the sense that they believe everyone should believe in it or everyone does believe in it. Aside from the fact that there's a terrible exclusion to anyone different, the main thing that you usually get is a blandness, a shallowness, a borrowed quality, a sense that someone is not truly observing or experiencing this thing, but they are in fact looking at other pieces of merchandise that have sold well or pieces of art that have been highly regarded, and they are saying, that is the right thing, the norm, the thing that we should try to espouse. It almost never works. The next issue, so honestly, if anyone can tell me something that they believe is universal in a useful artistic sense, please let me know. The other question is that of eternal, because one of the ways that we define the value of art is, for at least for a long time, was that it lasted, that it had gone on for generations and been communicated to many, many times and places. This was actually a delusion of Western culture for the past 600 or 700 years. The truth is, that there were many things going on that were just simply ignored by this canon of quality art, and for a long time the values that were seen as good were the values that were old. In other words, if it was old, it must, we still cared about it, it must be good because look, it had survived the test of time. That may not actually be the test of time. It may be the test of the power structure existing and passing it on to the next bunch of people in the power. There isn't actually, I do not mean to put down, Beethoven or Shakespeare or Homer. They're great, but they are not. The fact that they lasted may be more defined by the fact that they were regarded as worth keeping than that they were actually carrying something that made us like them. The thing that one of the reasons we may have liked them is because we were exposed to them, as opposed to the many, many other things which were not taught, shown, put in museums, played on the radio, whatever it is. Things are put through a bottleneck of culture. And that bottleneck of culture, that gatekeeping, then regards its own work as proof of value. Um, what started to happen though, starting at the end of the 1800s, Impressionism, there was a fair amount of change going on, and the concept of something being new being valuable started to break into the culture. It really hit in the 20th century. The early 20th century just started this revolution of thinking in which the idea was that you were hungry for the new, which therefore meant you were less respecting the old. This hit its height in the 1960s when demographically in the United States, certainly, people under 30 outnumbered people over 30, and for a little while there was this explosion of youth culture. And honestly, once again, much of this slides over into capital questions, which is the youth market was very important, but also the youth demographic was going to start voting. The main thing is that there was a hunger to please the new, to please the young. So ironically, the idea of something lasting in itself did not last. And the reason for this is nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. The planet itself not only will not last, but we're probably being encouraged not to last by our activities. The greatest works of literature and art, the greatest monuments of humankind, as we all know, they fall apart. They crumble. They become disregarded. Shakespeare is really inaccessible to 99% of the people. Classical music is barely listened to. What actually changes, even languages themselves, empires, they all fall. Chaucer, who used to be an extremely important English poet for all students of English to learn for hundreds of years, it now actually needs to be translated. The English, and it's theoretically still English, is so inaccessible to us that you cannot read Chaucer if you are an English-speaking person and understand what even the words mean. Basically, what's happened is any culture tells itself a story about its own life, its own existence. And almost always that story is that it is the pinnacle or the universal, the all of life. And as I just stated, eventually that is shown to be false, that there are other places, that there are other times, that the future will not give a damn. And yet we still tend to have in our mind the idea that something that lasts is, by its lasting, proved good, which is different. And it's a little bit like the concept that grew up over time, that if you were successful, you must be being rewarded by the powers, whether it be God or whatever else, as opposed to that our definitions of good are being steered by the things that last, by the things that are shown in the current time from the past. In other words, we've got it backwards. And why not? Sure, there's nothing wrong with loving some classic piece of anything. The problem becomes when either art is being pressured to conform to the values of the old thing, or now it's conformed to the pressures of the popular thing. Popular has replaced old as the sign of value. And I would like to say popular doesn't exist, but it does. It just keeps changing. And that's really the point about what I'm getting at too, is that all of these values change. They change drastically. And especially recently, they change very fast. I was listening to some history podcasts about the 15th and 16th centuries, and the developments of things, they took hundreds of years. Now they're taking 5 years for massive cultural and societal and economic changes to happen. We don't know what that's going to do to us. But what I can tell you about the arts is It requires you to stop thinking that you can identify what's good simply by either what is respected by the people who are judging, or what is popular. Either one of those is going to let you down if you are trying to judge. You have to decide. The point about all this is you have to decide for yourself what is valuable. Now, you may not be rewarded for your decision, but that's not the point. The point is to decide what you think is good and try to do what you think is worth doing. Because at the end of the day, the work is going to be the reward. The time you put in may or may not be rewarded. So if all you do is try to get the approval of either people who are going from old or people who are going from popular, you are going to betray the one chance you had to do something worthwhile, to do something that might do well. And that's really the most important thing I wanted to try and get to, is to recognize that art is by its nature an attempt to stop time and capture specifics. There is no general art. There is no general story. With all due respect to Joseph Campbell, he has been grossly misunderstood. And the things that he said do not actually prove that there is a universal story. There is not. You cannot make something that will be all things to all people or all things to all time. You can't do it. The more you try to do it, the more you damage the few things you have that are valuable. The few things that we take for as great from the past or from other cultures are very specifically of their moment and from their artist. And that's really the most important thing I'm trying to express to you is do not spend your time trying to cover all bases, trying to prove that you are good by associating yourself with something else that is good. You have to define for yourself what is good. I talked about this concept of ranking work or understanding what's good or bad in this video called Contest versus Library. I put a link to it down in the description. I hope that you'll watch that. There's also down in the description a link to a fascinating New York Times piece. It's an interactive article, so I can't say that much about it. You have to click on it to see the graphs moving. About a magazine called Sight and Sound, which in the second half of the 20th century was Sight and Sound. It was a British film magazine. And Sight and Sound published a best films of all time list. Started in the early 50s, I believe. And what the New York Times did is they analyzed the changes over the decades between 1952 and 2012 or something of the best films of all time list. Because what's interesting is, of course, this list changed radically, and it changed radically at different times. So therefore, this bestness, this issue of bestness is something that you really have to beware. That's really all I'm saying is you got to decide what you think is best and do your best to do it. That's all that there is. That's all that you can do. Eternity, universality, safety, they're a dream. And finally, just this concept of objectivity. The idea that these agreed upon things are true, that they are, you hear a lot, especially when you get into the arts business, when you get into the movie business or into any form of arts business, you'll find a lot of people saying that an artist can't be objective about their own work, which of course validates and justifies the work of producers and various critics and editors and such like that. And of course, artists often don't recognize how other people are going to react to their work, and they should recognize that other people may have different perceptions, but no one can be objective about art because there is no such thing as objectivity about art. There is no objective anything about art. And so when people say, you know, artists, that artist, they're not being objective about their work, they're truly embarrassing themselves. an agonizing thing to hear. Because what they're basically saying is, I can be objective, which is not true. What they are saying is, I have a different opinion than the artist. And this opinion may or may not be shared by more or less people. That's not the point. The point is, it's not objective. It is true. The question of whether an artist can judge their own work, some artists do it pretty well, others don't. Some profess to have a good sense of it, and others say, I don't know, I do the best I can. Some say, I absolutely know what the audience will love, and they're wrong. That's it. None of this is the artist's job. None of this is a human reality. There is no objectivity, there is no universality, and there is nothing that lasts. So my ending point is simply, if your work, it may reach across to other cultures, it may matter in the future, but you cannot make that happen. And in fact, the only things that we know tend to do that are things that are very specific and of their time and of their place and doing their vision. And then for some reason or other, they catch on. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. But you cannot make a choice in order to steer that. It will not work. It will not happen. In fact, the best odds you have is by being deeply, deeply specific and personal and guided by your own values. It's the best I can offer you. But I just wanted to sound a warning, a brief warning about these ideas of objectivity, of universality, of eternity. They just make no sense whatsoever. That said, I'm going to do some quick hellos here. Hello, Pelicans. Hello, Michael. Hey, Nacho. Good to see you. And Doreen. Drive-by uppercut. The term universal does seem exaggerated. Yes, absolutely. 4-quadrant aiming to cast the widest net. Exactly. Very much what I'm saying. But, it depends, because you get like the 4-quadrant thinking of universal when you get into, big business art. But you also get the sort of elite academic, Homer must be the best because he lasted the longest. And I'm just offering that there may be other Homers out there that we just never got a chance to read. They may have been in the Library of Alexandria and they got burned. That the idea that things are the proof of their bestness is their popularity or their high regard by a certain judging class is to be suspected. Is a faulty concept. Anyway. Hi, Gene. Good to see you from the cold, rainy southern USA. I hope that you are not inundated with too much rain. I know that there's an awful lot falling. How you doing? Richard Halford from Melbourne. Very nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Hello, Lake Filter. Michael Tanaka used to subscribe to Sight and Sound and American Film. Yeah, there were some fabulous film magazines in the 20th century. Absolutely. So that's it. Open to questions. Happy to talk about things. If I do not get any questions, I have one other topic that I'd like to bring up, which is one that I do not have an answer for or a good thought about. But this I grabbed this from Facebook, as you can see. It got 25,000 likes and loves down at the bottom left. And at the bottom right, it's been shared over 1,600 times. This is from I deliberately took away the site that was sharing it, but it says Edward Hopper, The Dory. This is not Edward Hopper's painting, The Dory. The Dory is a painting of a rowboat, which is what a dory is. This is an AI, as far as I can tell, and as far as I understand, is an AI-generated fake Hopper-esque painting. And here's the interesting thing, because one of the things I saw about this was simply a meditation on the fact that it was good. This is pretty good fake Hopper. It's clearly Hopper influenced, but it's also illustration influenced in a lot of ways. I don't think Hopper would ever romanticize the figure quite that much. That's very pretty for him. When it comes to figures, he tends to make his people a little less pretty. Um, but the main thing about it is, people have asked my opinion about AI. Should we use it? Can what? And one of my arguments was always, well, it's not going to do a good job. And the fact is, it can do a good job. And if it can do a good job doing this fake painting, it will probably eventually be able to do a good job writing a fake story or writing a fake script. That's certainly something that I don't want to rule out. The question is, should we value it? Like, is there something wrong with it because a computer grabbed a lot of samples and measured it and decided that certain elements of it could become more pleasing than others, and pumped out this quite lovely fake Hopper? I don't know. I'm not really troubled by it in that sense. In other words, if it were to turn out that eventually an AI was, with proper steering, or even if it becomes singular enough to think for itself, can create stuff, then it creates stuff. I mean, you can't deny that that is created. What I would say is, the question is always, should I, as an artist, use AI in my work? Should I use AI to work out my plot or to develop my characters? And this is where I have my problem, because if you think of, like, for instance, if there's a painter out there who loves Edward Hopper paintings, and he or she has looked at every single Hopper painting and studied and analyzed it and practiced to try and understand and copy those elements, they would come up with essentially the same thing that this AI did. Is that inherently wrong? No, lots of people do it. What makes a good artist tends to be when they take that and they add something to it. They bring something of their own, like they do Hopper style, but with very, very different content, very different topics. Or they use the style as a jumping off point to do the things that fit better for them. As I've said, many, many great artists started out imitating other artists. I would venture almost all artists started out imitating other artists. That's not the problem. The problem is not bringing anything of your own to it. And so what I would say is, I'm not even saying we shouldn't have AI art. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, if an AI can write a good movie, then maybe we should watch that movie, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I think is unwise is if an artist says, I'm going to essentially collaborate with an AI, the way that if you felt like you weren't very good at dialogue, but you were great at plot. So you find a writing partner, and they're good at the thing you're not, and you're good at the thing they're not, and you work together, and usually you don't get along very well, and sometimes you break up your partnership. But that often happens. And to the extent that maybe people want to use AI for that, all I would say is, I don't see the value of trying to find something that will prop up your lack, and make you something that you're not. To me, it's like an athlete using steroids. I mean, it's like, yes, you may be able to throw the ball farther or faster, but it's not really you doing it. So to me, the value for you should fall apart. I mean, if all you're caring about is getting ahead in the competition, and therefore you'll use whatever performance enhancing AI you can, good luck to you. I mean, I just feel like, why are you even listening to me? I strongly advocate the exact opposite. I strongly advocate doing what you do as best you can, and let the chips fall where they may. That's my take on this. But I did want to talk about it because usually I just say, oh, like, oh, well, the problem with AI art is not very good. This is actually really good. This is an absolutely delightful fake Hopper painting. And yes, absolutely, I agree. Drive-by uppercut. I just see a prompt and a data set of stolen Hopper. Absolutely. Um, and likewise, I have seen many paintings which are essentially that, but just the processor was a human being, and they haven't either turned inward or found their own voice enough to add to it. I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think that's an exclusively AI problem, but yes, and it's why I wouldn't necessarily put that in a museum. I mean, it's absolutely fine to take a look at. I like it. But I don't know that it's adding anything to the culture. I don't know. I don't know. It's a complicated issue. As a Hopper fan, Doreen Zimmerman says, attributing to him makes me angry. Oh yeah, okay, that's a whole other thing. I don't think it's nearly as good as his work. Yes, no. This is the other problem. Okay, the other problem with what's going on here is that in our society, people seem to have absolutely no concern whatsoever for the fact that this is not a Hopper. They are attributing it to Hopper and attributing it with the name of another existing Hopper painting. And essentially, I think they're just saying, like, I don't care. I just got to get some content out there, and that's pretty, and I'm hoping to get clicks, which they did. What was shocking to me when I scrolled through the comments was how many people were like, oh man, I love Hopper. That's great. And I'm just thinking, no, you don't love Hopper. You don't even know the difference. Yeah, it's a troubling element of our society. It's an insight into how messed up the systems by which we rely on for our culture and our communication, how rapidly they are being deformed, damaged, and that is it just the price of doing business? Maybe. And does it mean that we should go back to having an elite that decides the value of things and declares you are in or you are out? No, that's not a good system either. But there is some worth to understanding the values that brings to a world, and simply that you would be, at least for a long time, you would have been thrown out of the elite for falsely labeling a work of art. There should be some rules about some common, and by rules I mean enforced by, I believe, by the society as a whole. I believe that when you enforce things by saying, oh, here's the art academy and they're going to tell you what you can and can't do, I think the best enforcement comes from people simply finding it repellent and wrong to misattribute things, to not give a damn. That as like I often, when I'm looking at streaming services, and I look at the categories that they've put things in, and I see that, American Psycho is a comedy, and that one actually is fair, but there's so many things where you just look at the categories like, what are you thinking? What bizarre mechanics have ground into place that these works are being put in these categories? Let alone, I don't know if I have it here. If you look at Amazon, there was a copy of Ulysses, the James Joyce novel, and underneath the title on Amazon, it said it was currently #1 in Spanish poetry. And for all I know, in their category, for some reason, Ulysses had gone to #1 in the Spanish poetry category, but that was clearly a mistake in that category. Ulysses is not written in Spanish and is not technically poetry. So yeah, I don't know. There's something going wrong. And I do think it's really valuable to call out our participation, even though we have very little control, no control really, in the degradation of meaning, the degradation of simply calling things by their right names. Okay. Hello, Steed. Good evening to you. I suppose that means you are in Europe. Nice to see you. I don't think Hopper is happy about it. Yeah, no, I wouldn't think so. And what's more interesting is that if this was simply labeled AI picture waiting for a train 1920s, I would love it. I would say, damn, that's a nice little picture there. Um, I love your early videos. They have been very helpful. Earlier, no earlier. It's fine. That's I appreciate that. I did these videos specifically to make a reference work. I am actually considering turning them into a book version with essentially the same information, just different people like different formats. But it really helps me, Dialogue Craft, that you feel that they've been helpful, because that's what I'm doing here. Honestly, this is I do these live streams as a way to participate and communicate with my audience, but genuinely, the point is here. This is what I mainly have to say. Okay, Sonia says, the problem with AI is if it's not my story but something else's, how could I claim it as my art? Yes, exactly. If you are going to collaborate with AI and it's going to give you a storyline, well, then you didn't write that storyline, which means technically, as far as I'm concerned, you should share your credit. As you would if you had a writing partner. Like I said, if you are a writing partner and you're really good at jokes, but you can't work out stories for anything, so you team up together and you do the jokes and they do the story, then you put both names on there. It bothers me that people think somehow someone or something else coming up with your material is a legit act. I don't think that is. I had no idea all this was happening. The things you miss not being on social. Yeah. It's in some ways I envy you, Steed. I am glad that you are not on socials. I have a lot of problems, Steed says, with AI computed art. It steals from artists. Yes, absolutely. They don't get credit. Absolutely. It wastes precious resources on dying fun. Absolutely. And it just feels lazy. Absolutely. I am definitely against all of that stuff. I do believe that AI companies should be paying anyone whose material they glom up in their attempt to collect raw data. I do believe that they should either fix their wasting resources problem or get out of the business altogether. There's a lot wrong with it. It definitely feels like we're in the wild, wild west of AI. Once things start warning things, wrong. Once things start going wrong, things will probably get regulated. Westworld interest. I would hope. I am no longer confident that the march of regulation is going in the right direction. I am concerned about regulation, frankly, on things far more important than art. But yes, they should be. Executives will see AI as profitable by replacing jobs. Will inevitably need better safety nets for displaced workers as progress is accelerated. This is also true. Absolutely right. I was simply talking aesthetically. The debate on AI is much larger and legit. Okay. Michael says, I go to an eatery and I purchase my lunch. Tastes great. Do I care if it was prepared by a person? That is a fair question. If you could have a robotic factory that turned out good food, does that make it bad food? No, I don't think it does. Hello, Arrowset. Good morning to you. Glad. Where are you that it's morning? The topic, very briefly, was the idea of universal, eternal, and objective being three concepts which people tend to apply to art, which actually don't apply to art at all. My argument, and if you ever want to watch the playback of the first 20 minutes of this episode, you'll see that my argument is there simply are no such things as universal art, eternal art, or objective art. That's my argument. The reason I make this argument, because I'm not just here to pontificate, I am trying to make things useful for people who are working in creative fields. That is the goal, the only reason to be on this, and my purpose here was to point out that when people use that argument for themselves or are given that argument by critics or judges or teachers or whatever, it can mess you up. You can say, oh, well, how do I know that this will be long lasting? How do I know that it's universal? And the answer is don't even think about that. The things that there is no such thing as universal, there is no such thing as eternal. There is at best lasting a while, depending on your culture. That's all. It was just a way to liberate some creative people from the burden of trying to do something that cannot be done. Boom, 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 boom. Dialogue Craft says, can AI be effectively used in a company for writing, or is it generally discouraged? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Can it be? Sure, it is. Shockingly, some lawyers often have been presenting briefs to judges that they did not write, that they just ran through an AI. Yeah, no, obviously companies are using AI to write things all the time. They're stupid about that. That is it is very, very important to raise the question of why we are applying business judgments and models and business methods to things that are not business. That much of our life is currently governed by concepts that are essentially business concepts, commercial concepts, when it's simply not. Like I would suggest government, society, art, these are not things that should be operated on business principles. Okay. Richard Halford says, are we ourselves just organic computers making things up from our life inputs? Yes, there is an argument for that. I don't disagree with that. My point about the organic computer is that there does seem to be something in human beings, possibly in animals and plants as well, which allows for the at least appearance of a unique identity, a unique soul, if you will, a unique spirit, a unique combination of things. And the argument that if you simply put enough monkeys on typewriters, they would eventually type Shakespeare, apparently that's not true. Like even statistically, mathematically, it's simply not true. But even if they did, they would be typing someone else's creative work and just lucking into hitting those same keys. They would not have created Shakespeare. They would not write new Shakespeare. So the answer is, are we organic computers? Yes, but if so, there is something distinctly different as far as we can tell between us organic computers and non-organic computers. The AI people keep promising that the AI is or will soon cross that line. Many people are saying that may not be a good idea. I am very, very open to that concept. So the answer is, if we are, and there's nothing wrong with saying, I am the result of all the things I have taken in, and should I be giving credit to Graham Greene and John Updike and Billy Wilder whenever I write something? No, I don't think you need to do that. If anyone asked me, I would say, yes, absolutely. I definitely scanned their work in detail repeatedly. But the reasons I make my choices are far more complex than that. I don't know. There are philosophical and other arguments which would suggest that there's no difference. All I would say is experientially, it does seem to us that there is a difference. And that people seem to have some qualities that businesses, corporations, and machines do not have. And that it's worth taking that seriously. That's me. Okay, Sanchez Pablo says, my final exam and screenwriting course in uni, I need to write a short film screenplay in 3 hours. You mean right now you have 3 hours to do it in? I would say just first of all, don't second guess yourself if you only have 3 hours. And the main thing is keep it simple. Find one thing that you are going to make the key. It could be a really, really cool character or a really cool event. Just find something to organize around. Just say like, I just want it to be, to end with a guy walking into a glass wall, into a doorway and thinking it's open. Whatever it is, just find something to stick with. The key to being creative under pressure is making choices and sticking with that choice and then working in the limited place that allows you. This is the key. The key to creativity, you can do it. If you do it fast, it's more important. When you start with any creative project, you have too many possibilities. It is universal, it is vague, it is nothing. As soon as you make a choice, this is going to be a short, this is going to be a short Western, this is going to be a short romantic comedy, this is going to be a short about a person who cannot stop smoking a pipe, but they're trying to. Whatever it is, any choice you make narrows down the infinite vagueness. And once you make a choice, then the other choices branch off of that choice. In other words, from a million choices, when you say, it's about a person trying to stop smoking their pipe, you've just narrowed down 90% of the possibilities. So now you start to work with what you can about this person and why is the pipe important and what is it in the pipe and all that stuff. And then pretty soon you have a story. The more specific you are, the more you make choices, the more that you can be creative, especially being creative fast. The thing about doing anything fast is look for a hook, look for a gimmick, look for something that you can just say, oh, well, that's cool. And whatever that is, you count on that. And then everything else is the artistry of making that thing hit the way you want it to. Does that help? I hope so. What do you think about Sean Baker? I think he is an immensely talented, fabulous, wonderful filmmaker, and I love that Anora is getting some love. I think Florida Project is amazing. I just like Sean Baker. I think he's bringing a lot of wonderful attitudes and attributes, and I loved Anora. I thought it was amazing. The regulations going on in the U.S. Yeah, we're trying not to be political here, just for safety's sake, my safety. Do you have any suggestion for me, an old man that has a bad memory, to write? Yes, I do. Get it down. Write everything down. Work on paper. In other words, like when you're writing notes when you're thinking, write it down. Like the way I do it. I've shown you in many, many episodes of various things. Look at all the screenwriting step-by-step live streams. What I do is I will literally write the question or problem or situation. Like I'll say, I need to work on chapter 7. What's happening in chapter, and I'll write, what's happening in chapter 7? I'll write, Vinny has to get the donut out of the sink. And then I'll say, okay, well, why, what's going to stop Vinny? Why is it hard for Vinny? Like I write down the question and then I write down the answer. When I get the pieces that I like, I move them over to my outline or to my overview. In other words, I have like a workplace, a work page. I don't usually look back at it. I just use it to write things down as I go instead of thinking it in your head. You can't hold the things in your head. Get in the practice of writing it all down. So that's my main suggestion for an old man with a bad memory is get used to working on the page, not in your head. Like if you have a thought like, I need to get a better ending for this. Right. I need to get a better ending. And then say, what would make the ending better or what's wrong with the ending? Is the ending too quiet? Okay, what would be louder? Write those things down. Literally talk to yourself on the page. And when you get any good part, create a separate document where you take those little gems and you put them. I call it the outline. You can call it or use whatever you want. But I'm saying you have a rough workspace and then you have a hold on to this stuff space. That's how I do it. All right. Lake Filter says, I see a looming problem with executives overly reliant on past data to make their decisions. It fits AI products and rejects anything new. Yes, there is in general and once again, this is simply a question of applying business to art. It is tricky when you are in the art business, but from the beginning of time, way before AI, from the beginning of the entertainment business, all entertainment business people were saying, I want to sell a lot of tickets or copies or units. Therefore, I'm going to look at what else is selling well or what has sold well recently, and I am going to try and imitate or borrow from that. That kind of thinking has been going on as long as there has been an entertainment business, certainly way back into opera and 19th century novels. They all had the same attitude, not the artists necessarily, the people who were publishing or producing or impresarioing. It's always a problem with the business not knowing what will sell, so saying, well, what's sold recently, which is in the arts a dumb move, because the one thing we know is that people are going to want something new. Okay. Companies cite the algorithm for the decisions now. Weird times ahead. Yes, absolutely. The use of algorithms is very, very dangerous. I'm going to ask you to stop comments and questions because I'm going to run out. I've only got 10 minutes left. Is it okay for action movies to have an entire page without dialogue and have the characters just keep punching each other? I don't know what dialogue's in a Bruce Lee-like fight scene. Interesting. I wrote, I did a live stream, which I will, about 10 minutes after I'm done here, when I sign off, I'm going to go try and find a link. I did a live stream about how do you write action? How do you physically describe action? How do you put it on the page? So I will put a link to that down below. But my answer is, can you have an entire page without dialogue and just have the characters punching each other? Yes, but in theory, there should be something interesting in the different punches. And while you might have an entire page of it, remember that people who read scripts like a lot of white space. So if you're going to do that, break up your sentences into separate paragraphs, let it widen and loosen. But like I said, I will put a link to, I have specific examples and I talk about how you describe physical action in a script. There's many, many ways to do it. The one thing you don't want to do is big blocks of type. That you do not want. Nobody wants to read that in a script. Okay, Glenn's Fan Club says, before we choose what we write, some teacher teaches if it is sellable. Do you think we should even think about that? Yeah, you should think about it, especially if you are trying to make a living. You should certainly recognize the likelihood of the people who decide what goes on the air or out to the public. They're the ones who have to like something. They tend to think mostly about what is sellable. But here, my personal experience of many, many years of dealing with this, the producers and agents and executives who are saying, I know what sells, almost always are frantically looking around at each other and looking around at the latest data. And they are almost always wrong about what is going to sell next. Obviously, now and then, you bet big on something and it pays off. But most of the time, people are making their decisions based on what will sell, and most things don't sell. So they're wrong. But the answer is, if you want to sell, then you should spend some time understanding the parameters of your current marketplace where you are. If you are in a place where currently rom-coms are just not being made, then if you write a rom-com, you should know that it's going to be hard to sell. On the other hand, especially now, two things should enter your decision. One, things are changing so fast now that whatever is popular this month is going to literally be forgotten next month. It used to be that there was like a 2 or 3 year window when you could say, if this is popular, they are going to ride this wave for 3 to 5 years. Buddy action films, disaster films, rom-coms, whatever it is. So you had a chance to feed into that. Currently, there is no way to tell what's going to hit the algorithm next and move the what do they call it? There's a window, the something window to what's acceptable. So I personally would advise, write what you really love. Write what you would be happy to have offered the world, even if they reject it. Because then, if there's someone out there who wants it, you're going to do well. And the main thing is, if it's not going to sell, then it's not going to sell. You can't write something that is inauthentic to you in order to sell. You will write badly. My opinion. Does the one who perceives make art subjective? I would argue that all art is subjective because it is only perceived. There is no testable quality to art. You could say this painting is more red than that, but you can't say this painting is better than that because it's more red. Anyway. Arrowset says, I'm dialing in from Melbourne. Hi, we've got a bunch of Down Under folks. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you think it's interesting. It's hard to remember that what does last was specific to its time. It wasn't trying to last. It was trying to get its teeth into its moment. That when somebody painted, on the side of a vase in Greece, 3,000 years ago, they were not doing this thinking, oh, somebody in a museum in a country I can't even imagine is going to care about this painting. They were thinking that person over there who was going to buy my vase, or that feudal lord who is my master, is going to like this thing. They were thinking, I paint this way because that's how it comes out of my hand. I'm going to do that and hope that people like it. Nobody who does something eternal is operating eternally. They are operating in their moment. Canis Toei says, so are robots going to come up and collect their Oscars and BAFTAs now? Sure, their speech will come from the heart. Exactly the problem. Yes, if you are going to do something that is AI generated, and I don't mean like, if there was like an AI generated line, which frankly, why would you do it? But people do. But yeah, I believe that they should be credited. And if they are credited, that gets very complicated. So we should think about that. Blow Up brought up the question about perception. Blow Up brought up a lot of questions. I love the movie Blow Up. Absolutely, yes. Is it the witness that makes the art? Two things make the art: the artist and the audience. Without the artist, the witness would have nothing to witness. If they are just like, if you walk into a field and nature has provided a beautiful view, that's still not art. Not at least as our definition of art. It may be beautiful, it may be great, but it may not be art. You do need an artist producing a thing and an audience perceiving it. My opinion. It's all my opinion. I usually work by breaking rules and see how to make all the broken pieces fit together somehow. By product, my works are not really disturbed by AI, but it is getting extremely hard to sell. It's always hard to sell. And yes, it may be harder now. I don't know. I'm not trying to sell right now. But I would say, I like the idea of breaking rules and seeing how to make the broken pieces fit together. That's neat. I like that. Sealy Jack says, why are there some screenwriting teachers teach to write a rom-com end up living happily together as polygamy to stand out? I'm not entirely sure I understand that, but I think the basic idea, any question that starts with why are there some screenwriters teaching, the answer is going to be because for whatever their own experience and agenda, they think it's a good idea to teach it. What I always ask is, why do you care so much what a teacher thinks? You obviously have to care what your teacher thinks when you are in a class, because your job in a class is to work towards that teacher's vision. For the time that you are in that class, you should do what that teacher asks as best you can, your version of it. But if there's a teacher who's written a book, if you hear a video by me and you disagree with it or you think it's stupid, then the answer is it's stupid. The teacher is wrong. Don't worry about it. Throw it away. Don't let it clutter up your head. Is it valid to put something controversial to get attention in a screenplay? Well, valid in what sense? It's valid in the sense that it will probably get you attention. It could get negative attention. That's the big problem with controversy. But is it valid artistically? Sure, lots of people have done it. There's been a whole history of deliberately controversial or aggressively assaultive of the audience artwork. The Impressionists, when they came out, now they're all cute and pretty, but at the time they were highly controversial and stirring up attention. I don't know. I would say it's. I would ask you to question what the meaning of is it valid? Is it artistically valid? Certainly. Is it going to work to get attention? Maybe. Is it good? Depends on your definition of good. Is your tips to work in any genre in rom-com or thriller? Well, my tip would be work in the genre you like. Work in the genre that appeals to you. Work in the genre that you've seen a bunch of because you like it, because then you're going to work in that genre. It would not be my tip to try and catch a genre because it is popular at the moment, because as I have said, what is popular is now churning so fast that it is, and also so specific to certain marketplaces, that there is very little point, I believe, to trying to chase what is popular or selling. I believe this is a huge problem. Like everyone I have heard from in the business who I have talked to have said we're in a very, very weird and chaotic and bad place in the business because no one knows what to sell, because they were all used to having a sense of like, okay, this is selling, so we'll do more of that, or this is the new thing coming, we'll do that. But now it's literally churning so fast that nobody knows how to handle it. Please, no more questions. Do you think write, direct, and finance my own indie film is the best starting point for us who are starting out as a screenwriter? I personally do, but recognize that writing, directing, making your own indie, that's separate jobs. You have to learn all of them. They're very, very hard. They're really fun. And that financing, the only issue is make sure that you do not finance by debt. If you are financing with more than you can afford to lose, you are making a grave error. Always finance your work, which I think is a fine thing to do, with money you can afford to lose. That's the key. But then otherwise, yeah, do something down and dirty and cheap and get it done. You'll learn so much. You'll have fun. Even if no one can ever see it. I have a pile of films I made that I can't show because they used copyrighted music and I can't take the music out of the edit now. And also because they're primitive and I don't know that anyone would want them, but anyway, the answer is yeah, absolutely. I would say do it. Just do it in such a way that you can continue to live your life in a healthy way, and just recognize that that these are very, very time-consuming and effortful jobs. Sean Baker said 3-hour movies are okay. I disagree. Why are movies getting so freaking long? The answer is partly because we are mostly watching things at home, so you can afford to take the time. I believe that 3-hour movies are okay. I don't believe that 3-hour movies are required. Some movies should be an hour and a half. Some movies should be an hour. Some movies should be 17 hours, and call them a series. Whatever. I believe that it depends on the quality of the work, not the external difference. If you don't want to see a 3-hour movie, then I'm going to lose you as an audience if I make a 3-hour movie. That's cool. Some people do want to see a 3-hour movie. So, Michael Tanaka, I paint portraits most people never see. I think it's still art, whether anyone sees it or not. What I'm writing is art, whether anyone... Yes, absolutely. That goes without saying as far as I'm concerned. My point would be try to have a handful of people see it. But if you're really happy with no one seeing it, cool. But otherwise, see if there's like an art fair or something, and put out a stand or put it on a website, whatever. You never know. Even a handful of people seeing something feels good. Okay, no more questions. Willie Dessalines says, I always thought that a written script was the foundation of everything. but I made a short mockumentary with my sister and her kids where she tries to find out who put an empty jam jar back in the fridge. Everyone improvised, and it was really fun to do. I'm at the editing stage now, but it looks really funny. Yes, this is the truth. The truth is there are no absolute rules. There are no universals. Nothing is always true when it comes to creative work. The written script can make for a brilliant thing. So can an improvised mockumentary. So can an improvised narrative that you just take a long time and keep reworking. It's all possible. I'm thrilled that you tried something and made it and had fun, and that's great. Thank you, Arrowset. I appreciate that. Reminding people to like me. Funny that Brian De Palma thought Blow Up is the best movie in the world and admitted to defeat after seeing Raging Bull. Yeah, I guess. Brian De Palma's got some interesting opinions in general. Movies used to be agonizingly long. Then they got shorter. Now they're getting longer, going longer. They'll get shorter again. Swings around. That's true. For a long time, the 2-hour movie was simply the standard. And we're talking a few decades. Honestly, when film started, the movies were 20 minutes tops because that's how long a film could be, like physically. That's how much film you could fit on a reel. And people theorized, they genuinely did. They said the human mind cannot comprehend a film that runs longer than 20 minutes. They literally thought people's heads would explode if something ran to 2 reels. And then somebody thought of putting 2 projectors next to each other and switching reels. All of a sudden you could do 40 minutes or endlessly, frankly, and movies got longer. The answer is there is no absolute meaning to form. You can do a movie that's 3 minutes and you can do a movie that's 3 hours. They are both movies. They are both legit. Okay. Lake Filter says, thank you for the wealth of knowledge. Thank you. Thank you all. I am so grateful that you guys came and hung out with me today. And with that said, I'm going to offer you this. Go write something.